All right. So this is Tending Inner Earth for Gut and Hormone Healing. It's March 11th. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're catching the recording, I'm glad you're here as well. Just take a minute if you can to settle in. And I was just talking to the people live on the call about getting a drink if you need something to drink, being in a more comfortable position if you can. Um, Minimizing other distractions and just allowing yourself to really have this next hour. I think the more attention you can give to something, the more likelihood that you'll take away a really key or essential piece for your own healing journey. And I think there will be something here for you to take away, even if you um, decide you're not going to join the digestive reset, which I'll be talking about at the end of this call or this class. But the focus of the class is going to be on, giving you some key pieces of information that you could use and start implementing right away. So as we get started, just a few things. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat. I might not get to those until later in the call or later in the class, but just know that I will go back and check on those in appropriate timing. I'm going to ask that everyone stays muted for now. And then if someone does want to unmute at the end to ask a question, there's going to be time for that, just so you know kind of the flow of the class overall. So let me start by sharing my screen with you. And while I'm doing that, you can just let me know where you're calling in from. So you can type into the chat so you can kind of find where that is. And yeah, let me know how you're doing. I know we're coming up on spring. I was just from the UK. I was just in Kansas City this last week where my family is from. And hi from Phoenix. And the weather was great while we were there, but as we were leaving, it was kind of turning and getting colder. Coral from Milwaukee, of course. New York, someone from Copenhagen. Awesome. All right. Great. I'm in Southern California for now. So that's where I live primarily. All right. So if you're not able to see my screen, let me know, but it shows that it's working on my end. So I do want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to keep this to an hour. As I was preparing for this, I definitely started to get more and more insights and things I wanted to include, but I do want to respect everyone's time. So I will try to keep it to an hour, and also within that hour have time for questions at the end. Okay, so let's get started. Tending Inner Earth for Gut and Hormone Healing. I want to be sure that this is the right thing for you. So this is definitely the right place for you if you're looking for simple, effective solutions to any kind of period problems, digestive issues, and hormonal havoc, hormonal issues. And you're also willing to make some changes. So the suggestions I have do require that you implement some changes, and just to be sure that you're willing to do that. The women that are in my community, there's a lot of mothers in my community, as I said before, and generally these are people that really care about womb health and tending to it in a way that's both embodied and practical. So, I use functional medicine, East Asian medicine, and embodiment essentially. So you'll see parts of that weaved into today. And if you decide to join the digestive reset, you'll see that there as well. Okay, so may not be the right place if you're looking for just a quick, easy solution. You're just not available to make changes right now, and that's totally fine. There's some times in our lives where we're just not able to implement certain things, and that's totally okay. I've been there too. Or you're looking to sort of outsource your authority. So you're looking for someone else to tell you exactly how things need to be done. Or I definitely provide deep frameworks and lots of information and tips and things that I've seen to work. And I also want people to be in their inner authority and in process with what I'm saying. So that means you're taking it and filtering it through your own experience. All right. Okay, so just an overview so you know where we're headed. I'm going to help you understand your own innate connection to inner earth. And what does that even mean? What am I talking about here? clarify the gut hormone connection, just so you know how those pieces are interplaying, using both some East Asian medicine principles and some functional medicine principles. And I want to illuminate some of the most common mistakes. I use the term mistakes, but really I kind of mean patterns that people get into when it comes to gut and hormone healing. And that's what I see clinically as relevant, and just how to start to shift out of that. And then I'll break down a simple 4-week process to help you sort of reset this, get out of some of these patterns, and move forward. And towards the end, I'll create space for Q&A and just overall inquiry, and sort of allowing your more embodied wisdom to come through, so you have something to take with you after today. Okay. Sharing is caring. So I know when I come onto these classes, I'm always like, do they want me to share about this on social media? Should I not? How am I, like, what's the boundary? What's the consent around that? Please feel free, if you enjoy this class, to share it, take a screenshot, tag me on Instagram or Facebook. I appreciate it. That like helps me get the word out. And yeah, it's just a great way to create some more community and more questions and answers and all sorts of things. Okay, so about 50% of the people who signed up for this class know me pretty well, or have worked with me in other group offerings or one-on-one in person, or know me personally. And then the other 50% of you are new. So you may not have had a class with me before. This may be your first experience. So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kristin Hauser. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, somatic sex educator. My history, or my background, I taught yoga for many years, and I'm involved in the birth world and in birth work. I was a birth doula for several years. So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm also a mother of 2 babies still. I mean, they're not babies anymore, but they're almost 4 and almost 2. And I've had a private practice since 2015 that is focused in women's health issues, hormonal health issues. So womb health continuum, from fertility through postpartum. And as I was doing that, I really found that one of the root pieces to health or hormonal thriving is gut and digestive system and relationship to food. And that is sort of how I created this framework, was initially in working with women one-on-one. And if we go back even a step further, I got really into this field of work from my own challenges. So in my early 20s, I had just a lot of period issues. I tried hormonal birth control. It really didn't work for me. So I kind of had to find solutions on my own. And that led me to studying like a lot about gut health and different food choices, different dietary options. And I was able to move through a lot of challenges, from ovarian cysts to like extremely painful periods, but without like a clear diagnosis. And I just wasn't thrilled with what I was being offered from the medical model, which was hormonal birth control. So like cover up the issue, just like take these exogenous hormones from the external environment internally. Or here's some stronger painkillers that you might not be able to get over the counter. So I was like, okay, this is not really helping the root of the issue. So through a lot of my own work and studies, and then getting a professional degree, I sort of was able to move through that and no longer have all those issues. And if something does come up, I'm able to manage it on my own. So that's sort of the place I'm coming from. So let's start talking about this concept of inner earth. So in the Chinese medicine system, or you'll hear me sort of use both terms, Chinese medicine and East Asian medicine. I use East Asian medicine to be more inclusive, because some of my teachers were Korean and had different sort of philosophies to bring in. And I also had like a teacher who was really deep in Ayurvedic medicine from India. So I have a little bit wider or broader background than just specific mainland China. But that's just to include all the teachers that I've had. Overall, though, we're speaking to the 5-element system that comes from Chinese medicine. And I'll go into those elements a little bit more in a moment. But the way I sort of understand inner earth is it is both a process and sort of a relationship right? So it is the process of transforming and transporting vitality from food. So from the external environment, from food, you could also include like from sunlight, from water, from our experiences, and then using it and discerning how to use it and what's useful and what's not for our internal environment. So in Chinese medicine, this is really the inner earth element is related to the spleen and stomach organs and meridian systems. So a meridian is just a pathway that's usually linked to some type of internal organ. And the spleen and the stomach are just really important digestive. They're central to the digestive system from a East Asian medicine perspective. And you might be thinking, like, if you know anything about biomedicine, the spleen is not really active in digestion from a biology point of view. But you can think of the spleen as like the spleen and the pancreas together. So the pancreas is more, if you're familiar with biomedicine or biology, is an organ system that is, or an organ that is very involved in digestion through the release of enzymes. And so, yeah, from that point of view, it becomes a little more clear. I also consider inner earth to be our microbiome. So like the soil that both helps us metabolize hormones, produce even micronutrients, and just a whole host of other things that I'm not going to get into too many details about that today, but I will talk more about estrogen detoxification in a moment and how that relates to the microbiome. But our microbiome really does so much for us, and we're just beginning to understand from a research and scientific point of view what all that entails, because the microbiome's really only been studied for, I guess, coming up on 25 years. And it takes a long time for that research to be implemented in a practical way or in modern medicine specifically, especially Western medicine. Um, okay, and moving down, so the digestive fire. So inner earth is related to the fire element, and it does have a deep relationship to just our overall capacity to assimilate. And the spleen and stomach play a big role there. Um, yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that for now. So what are the 5 elements? So we talked about earth and fire a little bit, but there's also metal, water, and wood. So sometimes you see, usually you would see earth between fire and metal. I like this depiction. It's a little bit more traditional to the Korean medicine system where the earth is in the middle. The reason for that is that the season related to the earth is actually between seasons. So it is like where you go during transitions is back to the center. And we'll see in the next slide that the direction of earth is towards the center. So this also like has a nice visual. It's like, okay, here's fire. So if we think of fire is related to summer and metal is fall, but between the seasons, you go back to earth. So I think it really depicts also just like how important and fundamental the earth element is to the function of the rest of the systems. So each element has at least 2 organs. Fire has 4. And has a season, a color, a taste, all kinds of things that are sort of associated with it. But the most important thing for you to know right now is that between the seasons and between the elements, there is this returning to the earth. And right now, where we're at in the Northern Hemisphere, at least, is we're in the water season of winter. And we're almost ready to return to wood. And so as we do that return, we go back through the earth element and into the wood element, which has a very different sort of energetic imprint than water. So water is sort of down and in, earth is up and out, or I'm sorry, wood is up and out. And earth is sort of what can ground us through that transition and help us through that transition. So we'll go a little bit more into that. So the earth element from a Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine point of view, as I said, it's either associated with the space between the seasons, so that transitory space, or late summer. So late summer being like the time of harvest, that would also be associated with earth. The yin organ is the spleen, the yang organ is stomach. The emotion that can be influential here or affect the earth element overall is pensiveness. Sometimes you see that written as worry as well. So worrying a lot, overthinking, pensiveness is sort of doesn't help the earth element, especially the spleen. The direction, as I said, is towards the center. The tissue that is related to, especially to the spleen, but generally to earth, is muscles. So it's said that the spleen is sort of what nourishes the muscles. The spleen has a relationship to blood, which I'll speak to in a moment. So there is also that link there, and the color is yellow. So part of tending inner earth and sort of tending this through transitory phases, through transitions, is really coming back to your own center and fortifying your digestive system to carry you through the transition to the next season. And I just want to speak to wood as well today, because that's what we're moving into with the spring. And I've timed the live course Digestive Reset for Hormonal Resilience to align with the spring equinox. That way we're really like aligning with the rhythm of the year. So the organ systems with this are liver and gallbladder. Liver is a very influential organ for hormone detoxification, for menstrual health regulation from an East Asian medicine point of view. And gallbladder has a very unique and strong relationship with the sinews. So like your tendons, your ligaments, how your structure is, how you move through time and space. So movement is a really important part of the wood element overall. The color, of course, is green, kind of a color that you would associate with spring. And the direction is upwards, because wood tends to grow up and out. All right, so let's kind of start talking a little bit deeper about this gut hormone matrix. So what does Inner Earth have to teach us about the gut hormone connection, and how are these things just so fundamental and important? So the spleen, as I was speaking to earlier, which is the yin organ of the earth element, plays a crucial role in producing blood and also controlling the blood. And by controlling the blood, I mean keeping the blood in the vessels when it's supposed to be in the vessels. So any bleeding issues, heavy periods, bleeding at irregular times, spotting, has a component that is rooted in the earth element in the gut and the spleen. The earth element is what allows us, as we were saying earlier, to take vitality from the external environment, bring it in, and it provides substance for creating hormones. So without that substance coming in, without the vitality from the external environment, we're not able to create hormones to sustain our own lives, to potentially reproduce. So that is also like just a very important thing to realize, is like your hormone system, especially in your reproductive years, which is sort of where I assume many of you are, it is just essential to have enough inner resources. And the gut is what sort of allows that to happen. Because if you're not assimilating enough from the external environment, even if you are eating enough food, then your body's going to say, oh, hey, like there's not enough resources out there. It's not a good time to potentially reproduce. And then all your sex hormones sort of get downregulated in a way. So that sort of like leads us into talking about micronutrients and how important that is for enriching the endometrial lining. So it's like if the endometrial lining is sort of like the soil of the womb, sort of where, you have all these microbes living there, and like the uterus has its own microbiome, which is like a newer thing, but it's true. And you have all these complex immune function happening and micronutrients that need to be in a certain sort of concentration or a certain configuration for implantation to occur and just for overall thriving health to occur. So the gut plays a big role in that as well. And as I mentioned before, the microbiome. So the microbiome has many roles, but what I want to break down for you here is like something that's called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome is part of the microbiome that helps to detoxify estrogen, estradiol specifically. So there's various types of estrogen. The one that's most prominent reproductively when you're not pregnant is estradiol. And we need that to be eliminated once it's been used. Otherwise, it gets recirculated and it can cause a lot of issues from just painful periods, hormonal headaches, inflammation overall, endometriosis, ovarian cysts, like just, yeah, it's not good to have that recirculating. So having a robust microbiome and tending to that regularly is what can help your body, eliminate properly and reduce sort of that estradiol reuptake into your system, because your large intestine will just like literally reabsorb it and it goes back into circulation, even though your body's still producing other estradiol via the ovaries and other pathways. And at the bottom here, we talk about sort of the concept of the inner earth as like our boundaries. So our gut lining is really our boundary from the internal environment to the external environment, right? And how our body modulates what comes in and what doesn't come in, what stays out. That is really key in just providing a baseline sense of safety and security, as is being sure that you're just getting enough nutrition overall. So that's kind of what I was speaking to earlier about just having enough to actually produce hormones and have enough sex hormones to go around. That is also tied up into our feeling of safety and security inside. Okay, so we've been going for a little bit. I just want to pause for a moment. And if you're here live, or even if you're watching the recording, you can just like let your eyes sort of go away from the screen for a moment and look around your space. Maybe you notice something you didn't notice before. So it's good to just take a little pause and let your body sort of start to assimilate what you've heard so far. And maybe something's coming up or you're thinking of something in particular, just let that be there. And then just coming to a more neutral gaze. So you don't have to fix your eyes on the screen again quite yet. You can keep your eyes open or closed if it's safe to do that. You're not like driving or something. And just do the same thing internally. So just like you're feeling, sensing, like how is your body receiving this information? So how are you filtering this through on a sensation level? How is your gut feel as you're listening to this? What are you noticing inside? And just repeat that to yourself. So I'm just noticing like my belly feels pretty relaxed right now. And if your mind takes you first to something that doesn't feel so good or is bothering you, that's totally normal. See if you can find something that feels good or at least neutral. So something that's like pleasant, you enjoy it, it feels resourceful. And if that is already kind of too much or triggering in some way, then just something that feels neutral, that you just kind of feel neutral about. And then just noticing what happens in your system as you do that. Yeah. So I saw someone on the live call, like just take a deeper breath, which is like a very normal settling response. Yeah. And just letting that sort of go. And then as you're ready, you can come back to the screen or maybe readjust yourself. Just any natural movements that want to occur or anything you need to do. Okay, and then we'll keep going. And I want to talk about what I've seen clinically and just overall from teaching this course already twice in a group format, and then just working with several, probably 100 women at this point, around fertility, menstrual health issues, digestive issues. There seems to be these patterns that we can get into, and I've gotten into them too, so I understand these pretty well. Just 3 common mistakes. We can call them mistakes, we can call them patterns, but I'm going to go into each one in detail. So when they're sort of going or trying to heal gut and hormone issues, you can think of this as like inner earth tending. The first one, and it's more common than you would think, is just not eating enough, especially not eating enough fats and proteins. The second one is doing some type of elimination diet, but either kind of, it's like a hypo boundary thing. It's like you're not quite fully in, you're eliminating 80-20. So you're 80% eliminating, but there's still that 20% that you're not. Or you're eliminating for only a short period of time. So maybe only a few days or a week. So it's really not long enough to tell if it's making a difference. On the other side of that spectrum is hypervigilance. So hyper boundaries. So you're like very regimented about food. You're sort of, maybe you have a history of an eating disorder or just trouble with food overall. So you are more hyper vigilant about it, which creates an internal stress response, which is like overall not good for gut health. So let's dive into each of these and kind of break them down for you so you can see if you see yourself in one of them or you have in the past. Just so you can understand sort of what these are and what the issue is. So number 1 is not eating enough. This can look different ways. So for some women, it's just skipping meals. Like they may have a busy lifestyle. Their body may feel like it's okay for them if they skip meals, like they handle it well, like their system doesn't really require that they eat as frequently. And then the other thing is just maybe they don't have a good appetite, so low appetite, so they may forget to eat. This could also look like restricting or counting calories, so being more restrictive and sort of that hyper boundaried or hypervigilance sense. Something I see a lot with like professionals, so women who are really out there with their careers, which is great, but they just have this sort of complex of like not enough time to eat syndrome, or they might eat while they're working. They might only eat towards the end of the day, not eat breakfast, have a very small lunch, and then eat most of their food at night. And it's usually, they can't really make up for the calories lost, and it's sort of stressful for the system to have to organize itself in that way. And the other one is drinking food. So I'm not against juicing or smoothies or any of that. I just don't think it's great to be in a habit of doing that all the time. Or if you are, like, if I'm going to have a green juice, which I do like to have on occasion, especially in the spring and the summer, then I would pair that with something that has some fat and protein, so I can like better absorb the nutrients that are in that juice and just like slow the uptake of any sugar and make it feel more like has more substance to it. All right. So what happens with this one is really like it kind of falls in that category of you're not getting enough to create the hormones that you need. You may, and I see this in pregnancy a lot too, just not getting enough protein in to sustain yourself and the pregnancy. So I think we underestimate, because of diet culture, because of fat shaming, because of like so many things that we're just indoctrinated with, we underestimate how much we actually need to sustain a reproductive life. Um, and we may be replacing certain calories or certain intake with foods that just aren't as nutrient dense. So we're not getting the actual nutrition that's needed. So this can really just cause a lot of hormone issues, and just keep yourself from feeling like you have the energy to sustain your life. So what I've seen is when women are able to get out of this and just start eating more consistently, even if they're just eating a little bit more at a time, um, their vitality increases so much, and a lot of hormone issues will just like sort of start to resolve themselves. Okay, so this one, as I was speaking to, it's like short efforts in elimination diet. So someone might choose to eliminate something, but for a shorter period of time than would be needed to tell if it's really making a difference or not. Um, or they're eliminating something, but still having it. So I don't think long-term elimination diets are needed in most cases. But I do think if you're at the beginning stages and you're trying to figure out if some particular food is causing you issues or not, it's really good to have a short period of time where you are more boundaried with it and you are a little more discerning and um, yeah, you just have that boundary for yourself and you know that after 4 weeks, you're going to reassess and potentially reintroduce foods and see how you respond. But you really want to give your body this break from this particular food, whatever that food is that you're trying to eliminate. And I think that can really make a big difference because if you try eliminating something, but it's like you're not fully eliminating it, you're having it still sometimes, that can just re-trigger inflammation within your system. And you sort of get in this pattern of like, I got a little bit better, but not. And it's not clarifying for your system overall. So once you go through an entire elimination process and then reintroduce foods and have a little more clarity about how you're responding to foods right now, which is like a whole nother thing because the way you respond to foods changes over time and changes based on your overall gut resilience. So it's good to check in every once in a while. And like, for example, I had eliminated dairy. Like I've been dairy free for a really long time, besides butter and refined butter or clarified butter. So ghee. Um, and I did this reset process last about a year ago. And I decided, okay, I'm going to try. I haven't really done cheese or dairy in a while, besides when I was pregnant. So I'm going to do that again and see how I do. And I actually did fine with it. And I was really surprised because I hadn't eaten it in so many years as a regular part of my diet. So these things do change over time. It's good to sort of reassess where you're at and know that I'm not someone that, unless you have like a clear, you have celiac disease, you are very much allergic to gluten or or eggs or something else, then yeah, that's just something that you're going to adjust your lifestyle around. But generally speaking, for the general population and the women I work with, I don't think that long-term elimination diets are needed. They're just needed um, to be committed to in a certain way for a certain extent of time for them to be effective in providing you information with what could be causing issues. All right. And lastly, there's hypervigilance. So I have a lot of people ask me about who consider joining the digestive reset about disordered eating. They're afraid that it will send them into sort of that pattern again. And what I say to that is like, definitely follow your own sort of gut feeling. If you're feeling like that feels too restrictive or it's like I'm going to have to go back into that pattern, then it's probably not the right thing for you. But I do think there's also room here for people that tend towards that pattern of hypervigilance to still join the container and have this experience overall. So what hypervigilance look like from my point of view is like there's really no room for error. So you're really that like inner critic comes into play and that you really don't want to make a mistake. The way I approach the elimination diet that I recommend with the digestive reset is like really that for the first whole week, you're just focusing on being sure you get these certain foods out of your diet. And we all have mishaps, mistakes. You're out and you forgot to bring enough food. So you end up getting something that has something that you might not want to have in it. And yeah, I just try to encourage people to take it in stride and just continue on and not, go into really criticizing yourself about that. Hypervigilance can also look like following really strict meal plans or, um, just really being regimented about everything that you eat. It could also look like just eating the same things over and over again if you know what works for you. I'm not saying it's bad to do that on occasion or at times, but yeah, just really this hyper focus on that. It can also look like doing a low FODMAP diet or AIP, which is autoimmune paleo, or doing Whole30. Those things are all good or okay. I don't have a problem with any of those like frameworks overall. Again, I just think that for most people, long term, they're not a good idea. And that's actually like at a scientific level as well. So doing low FODMAP or AIP for a longer period of time, it does shift the microbiome, and it can actually cause you to have a little bit less diversity in your microbiome, which isn't necessarily a good thing. More diverse tends to be better. And yeah, shifting out of this pattern overall, it softens your system internally. It's like if you have it's like we also want to remember to enjoy food and to be in relationship with food and what we're eating, and not just, looking at everything as good or bad or this or that. So I think getting out of this pattern is really about like connecting more to pleasure and enjoyment. And that in and of itself is really healing and nourishing for gut and hormone health overall. Okay. So I'm curious if anyone who's on the call, if you're listening to the recording too, you can just check in with yourself and see if you notice yourself in any of these patterns, which are super common. I think I've been in really like all of those patterns at some point in time. And yeah, just to know like, okay, this could be like affecting me in a certain capacity. So yeah, just check in. You can type in the chat if you want to share, or if you just want to jot something down for yourself, you can do that as well. And the question is like, how can you shift out of this more longer term and just create more gut and hormonal thriving? And I think with any of these patterns or with any gut hormone issues overall, it does create a sort of type of confusion or overwhelm. It could even be frustration. But I'm sure if you're here, like you would prefer to not be in that, and to sort of find something that can create some more lasting change for yourself. Okay. So I want to take you through the framework that is part of the course, but you could also, like, I'm setting this up in a way that you could totally DIY this. Like you could do it yourself if now's not the right time for you, or you're just like want to give it a try. But I'm going to essentially outline the digestive reset for hormonal resilience course that I'm offering starting next. It starts next Thursday, and we start making the dietary changes on March 22nd. So let's go through week by week. So in week 1 is really about creating the container, creating the boundaries for the experience, and removing all of these potentially inflammatory foods. So I say potentially because everyone's body responds differently. And I don't really like to assign foods as like bad foods. But generally speaking, these have been shown in research and just in my own clinical and personal experience to be potentially inflammatory for the gut, the microbiome, the hormonal sort of axis. So those are dairy, gluten, grains, soy, corn, conventionally raised meats, and animal products. So that's important because what we're doing with conventionally industrialized meat is feeding them a lot of genetically modified corn, just feeding them a lot of grains, which traditionally, like, cows would not eat a lot of grains. Chickens would also not be eating a lot of grains, that sort of thing. So it's sort of like they're having inflamed systems and passing that along to us through the meat. And this is also like been shown in research that meat that is industrialized or raised on genetically modified food, or food that's not natural to its own system, that it does pass along the inflammation right to us. Coffee and caffeine, besides green tea, because green tea is really good for the microbiome. But yeah, just to give yourself a break from caffeine. I don't think that caffeine, like most people don't need to remove caffeine long term, or coffee. but just to give yourself a break from that, give your system a break from that. Refined sugar is a big one, a big driver of inflammation. Processed foods. So in processed foods, a lot of times are industrialized oils. So like canola oils, even sunflower oil, grapeseed oil, all of those that are sort of mass produced are the way the fats are in those are sort of inflammatory in nature. Alcohol, a big one. And then I say, what about eggs? So a lot of people do continue to have eggs during the reset. I myself do. Eggs are really high in micronutrients, especially if they're pasture raised. They're great sources of fat and protein and lots of choline and different micronutrients and vitamins. However, some people do have a reaction to them. So if you suspect that you do have a reaction or you already know, then you would just also eliminate those for this period of time. Sometimes it's also nice, like if you're someone that eats eggs a lot, or um, you feel like you've been eating them every day for a long time, to just take a break and see how your body responds, and you would want to just replace that protein or that fat intake with something else. So yeah, week 1 is really just about eliminating these foods and like being gentle with yourself as you do it. So knowing that it might take you some time and it's a big adjustment. And during the course, like the first call happens before this point. So you're like preparing yourself for that and like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to set myself up in this way. I need to get these items. I need to like remove these things from my kitchen or just put them in a different place so you're not having them at that time. All right, week 2. So you want to be focusing on nourishment. So like, what can you eat? How can you nourish your body? In the course, this is when I get into like fats and hormones and like how much do you need to be eating of what should you be focusing on? And yeah, just like how to move forward overall and focus on what you can eat, because there's a lot outside of that list that's available. And I do say that this is like, you can do this if you're a vegetarian. I've had some vegetarians do it and modify it. However, I will also say, as an East Asian medicine practitioner and just someone that's been really deep into functional medicine for a while, I am a proponent of animal product consumption, meats, animal meats, organ meats, especially bone broth, dietary like fats. So clarified butter is great, animal fats, fish. So just to know that like I've had vegetarians do it and adapt. However, most of the women that join are eating meat to some extent. And I was also a vegetarian at one point, so I can relate to that for sure. All right, so week 3 is really sort of, okay, you have the baseline being that you've eliminated the inflammatory foods, and then you've focused on really nourishing yourself and knowing how much to eat and what to eat. And then week 3, I focus a little bit more on eating for estrogen elimination and like really tending to your microbiome and also stabilizing your blood sugar. So all of these things are super essential for hormonal health at different levels. And I like to introduce this stuff in week 3 because you've already kind of gone through any detoxification or cravings. You've adjusted to the diet and you're able to assimilate more through the mind at this point and make small refinements to ensure that you're getting the most out of how you eat and when you eat and what you eat. So yeah, it's like a good flow for everyone overall. I see that there are some questions. I will get to that in just a moment. Okay, last week, the final week is really for integration and recognizing that when we tend to enter Earth in this way, we're not just affecting the physical body. So there's an emotional processing component that comes with this. There's a clarification that comes with this. Even someone who did the reset last fall was like, I noticed that I'm like sorting through my things more. Like I'm like organizing my house and my drawers, and like that is actually a sign from the East Asian medicine perspective that the small intestine is like cleansing itself and like becoming more discerning, because that organ system like determines our level of discernment around what is for us and what is not for us. So there's a capacity for sorting that you can actually see like manifest in your outer life as well. So this is when you sort of take stock of like what you've gained from this process. How's your energy level? Are you sleeping better? Have you had a cycle yet? If so, how is it? You know, it's a 4-week process, so you should have a cycle either sometime during it, and you can kind of assess where you're at and what's changed, and then from that place consider reintroducing foods. And I have a very like specific process for doing that. Essentially, you want to introduce one food at a time and do it slowly. Look for symptoms, look for reactions. And if you don't have anything, then you would move on to the next food. I have women that choose to stay on it longer because they're just feeling so good, and they want to continue and see if there's even more sort of changes that occur. And then I have people that do just like start to reintroduce foods and get back to some of their if the foods work for them, then they reintroduce those and continue on essentially. And yeah, I mean, of course, like I did this in the group format for the first time a year ago, and I participate every time myself. And I had been drinking coffee like since my daughter was born, more or less, maybe when she was like 3 months old or something, I started. And I gave up coffee for that time, and I actually haven't fully brought coffee back in since then. So it's been a year, about almost a year. And I still have it on occasion, but I'd say like maybe twice a month. Like, so you never know, like sometimes things just drop away so easily with this reset that they don't really come back into your awareness or come back in if you're feeling well without it. You never know. All right. So I want you to sort of pause again here and see if there's really like a key takeaway for yourself or something that you could adjust right away that would make a difference for you. Because really, when it comes down to it, it's like these things can be really simple and effective and help you heal at the root level. And you don't even have to necessarily implement everything that I just discussed. Even if you just take one piece away and you're like, this is what I'm going to focus on, or I can tell this was the thing that like really spoke to me. Just clarifying that for yourself so you do feel like you have some type of action step or something you can sort of take with you from today. So if you have something, you can type that into the chat. Let me know about it, or if you're listening to the recording, you can always send me an email with your questions or kind of what your big takeaway is. And then I wanted to just briefly, before we have some questions, talk about like if some of you on this call will want to join the reset, if it's the right time for you. I really don't want to like there are so many solutions, there are so many possibilities for healing. And I think a very important part of healing, and especially for gut and hormones, is relaxation and realizing that you have time and that there are other solutions available, there are other possibilities. And I don't want to make it seem like this is the only thing out there, this is the only possibility for you to find healing, because I don't actually believe that's true. I just think that there will be some people that think that this is the right option for them. And so I want to be really clear that I welcome you into this process together, and I would love to have you. So the digestive reset, as I said, starts next Thursday with a live call just to discuss sort of the overview of the reset and get you started, answer your questions, help you get prepared for making the dietary changes. And the dietary changes we'll do together starting on 3/22. So on that following Monday, March 22nd. With the course, you get access to a private Facebook group, which I moderate and I'm pretty active in. I provide supplement recommendations for the duration of the reset. There are various options. They're all outlined. I answer questions about those. Pretty clear and straightforward. And then videos and PDFs that are released throughout the process. So sort of on a week by week basis, you get new material to help you make refinements and just expand on your like gut and hormone healing journey. So as I said, each week you get new resources. So the resources that are in red are videos, the other ones are PDFs. So some of the videos are varying in length, but they're like 20 to 40 minutes. So pretty digestible, but also like really great information in there. And it really helps you sort of move through the process and have check-in points where you can check in, be sure you're staying on track, and assimilate new information as you're ready. And then there's some bonuses. So there's a video all about digestion according to Chinese medicine. So I go even more into inner earth, the different organ systems that play a role in digestion, and how to support that overall. It's really important to consider that like we need to have a baseline of understanding what good digestion looks like, because we might not even know that. And I love East Asian medicine theory for that, because they always provide a really good framework for like how things should work and what it should look like and what's normal, what's not normal, and how to work with your own constitution or what you are sort of given. And then I also cover some acupressure points and moxibustion for digestion. So I teach you 5 different points that you can use for acupressure or moxibustion. And moxibustion is an herbal heat therapy, which can be really great for digestive issues. And that's something you can do for yourself. Moxibustion is something you would have access to purchasing. You don't need to be a medical provider or practitioner to get that. And then eating seasonally according to Chinese medicine, and a resource list just to help you continue sort of after this process if you want to dive more into anything. I always provide sort of where I'm taking my information from as much as I can outside of my personal experience and professional experience. All right, so the price for this is $97. There's not an early bird. There's no like, yeah, it is what it is. It's 97. Once you're in, you can join any of the live resets. I know I will definitely offer this again live in the fall. So with the live additional support, as I said, there are 3 live calls throughout the digestive reset. So about every other week we check in. The middle, it's a place for you to come receive support, get additional information, and be sure you're staying on track essentially, because things do come up throughout the process, and I address that during those live calls. Yeah, so if you want to learn more about this, I will send you, it will be in the email when I send out the replay for this class, or you can head to wombmedicine.com/digestive-reset. There you can read more about it and you can join if you'd like. All right. So briefly, I've had several, let's see, like more than 30 or 40 women now have taken it in a group format. And it's really, yeah, it just blows my mind. Like some of the results people are getting, like a friend of mine, Sarah, she said it helped her lose weight. That is like not what I'm promoting or the intention of the reset. But I think just because she reduced her inflammation and started working through some of the emotional ties with food, she found that it helped her lose weight. A lot of women experience better periods. So Whitney was someone that I was working with, and she said just from making the dietary changes, she had like one of the easiest periods that she's had in a long time. Amelia is from France, and she was one of the students that I had that actually decided to continue with, not reintroducing foods for a while after the reset, because she was just so happy with how she was feeling. And when she came into it, she like wasn't necessarily having a lot of issues. She wasn't feeling terrible or bad, or she just like wanted to kind of feel better or, have this digestive reset experience. And she was like really surprised at how maybe some of the foods she was including in her daily life were affecting and creating some more sluggish digestion overall that she didn't really recognize before. So if you're ready to join, if it's the right time for you, if you feel like it's something you could commit to, then I'd love to have you. And I would love to just take some time for questions. I know we're approaching 11, but I can definitely stay on for the next 15 minutes or so and take some questions. So I'm going to stop the screen share for now. And okay, let's see. Okay, so some people heading out are going to catch the recording. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, drop them in. So Krishna said, I don't drink coffee because the caffeine makes me feel, yeah. So some people, but sometimes I'll take a cup of decaf. So is decaf inflammatory? To that, I would say most likely yes, because the way decaf is processed is usually chemically. So the chemicals, it depends on how it's decaffeinated. So it kind of, yeah, it depends. But generally, I would say like if you're going to commit to the reset, I would even cut out decaf for that time period. And yeah, some people just don't process caffeine as well. And usually, you know, if you're one of those people, and then it is just clear that it's best to avoid coffee or caffeine at all times, not just during the reset. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're here. So any other questions about the reset specifically, or yeah, just your own personal journey with gut and hormone health right now? If you have like a question about something you're dealing with, or if you think you're not sure if this would be the right thing for you, or if you're not sure if it would help. So sometimes I do have people ask like, this is what I have going on. And I can usually pretty quickly discern, yes, this would be helpful, or no, actually I would pursue XYZ or something else. Yeah, it just depends on where you're at and what your needs are. Just checking in. And anyone, you can type in the chat or you can unmute yourself if you prefer that. Any specific recommendations for missing periods? Oh yeah, that would, from my point of view, like without knowing anything about you, but usually that would fall more under the category of like not eating enough. So just not getting enough calories. So with that, what's really important is to pay attention to how much fat, protein you're intaking, and how consistently your intake is overall. So sometimes even if we're getting enough, if we're not eating consistently enough, your system's just not getting enough input, or your blood sugar could be dysregulated, and that can really put a damper on ovulation. It can just really mess up ovulation, essentially, is what I'm trying to say there. So eating enough and also eating consistently. So if for someone that is not had their period in a long time, I would say you need to be eating every 2 to 3 hours during the day and not doing any type of intermittent fasting. So no intermittent fasting, so not fasting more than just a normal night. So you might stop eating it, or you might even have a snack before bed. I don't know like your specific situation, but that might be a case where I'd be like, you really need to eat a protein fat rich snack every 2 to 3 hours, or a meal, and assess your protein and fat intake overall. Okay, so Coral says, I assume this is safe and also really beneficial. Yes, it is definitely safe and very beneficial if you're trying to get pregnant. This is a lot of my work has been with fertility. And so originally this was a preconception cleanse. So I've had some pregnant women actually participate in the reset. Then you might choose to make some modifications if you want to. A lot of pregnant women do keep dairy in for the calcium intake and the protein as well. So you might choose to keep that in. This isn't like a low carb keto. That's not what I'm recommending. So it is really adaptable and great for pregnancy and even postpartum. So postpartum digestive issues can arise, and as well as just like hormone issues. And so this is a great resource for that as well. And I'm not I'm not advocating for calorie restriction or, actively trying to lose weight. Although if you want to do that, totally your choice to lose weight, not to calorie restrict. I actually don't really think that's useful. Just to be clear on that. But yeah, it's totally good if you're trying to get pregnant. I think it's really helpful. And if I ever try to get pregnant again, I would do this beforehand just to really set myself up for it. Yeah, Jessica, you're welcome. So yeah, I've had women do this, trying to conceive while pregnant, postpartum, or just trying to heal gut and hormone issues overall. So menstrual health issues. Yeah. Any other questions before we go? All right. Well, if you're watching the recording and you do have any questions, you can email me, Kristin at womb.medicine.com, Kristin at womb.medicine.com. Or you can just reply to the email where you found the recording. I'll get this recording out probably within 24 hours or so. And I will be emailing you a few times before next Thursday before we start. So you have some time to decide. You can also just go ahead and jump in today if you're ready. I'd love to have you. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks for being here. Bye.